Hello my dear friends and welcome to a new video. I thought today we'd get really cozy and talk a little bit about knitting. Because maybe you remember when I made my Little Women inspired dress around Christmas time, I was talking about how I really wanted to knit a little scarf to go along with it, but I just couldn't knit. Back then I was watching Lapsi make her little Sophie scarf and I was really inspired by it and I wanted to make something similar, but when I looked at the pattern, all of these weird abbreviations just meant nothing to me. Like I could just about do a knit and a purl stitch, but that's about it. So my skills were basically not there. So at the time I got myself some cotton yarn from a local shop that I thought had a really cute color and I had no idea what I was doing. So I just thought, you know, why not improvise it? And this is what the little scarf looks like that I actually managed to finish. So I have been doing some knitting before this, but I never actually finished anything. This is the very first project I ever finished and I made so many mistakes in this. It's also very thin because it's just cotton and doesn't really do anything. But then again, I knew at the time, even as I was knitting it, this isn't going to be a masterpiece because I felt like at the time I was just really struggling doing the motion and stitches kept slipping off the needles and I kept making mistakes. So this was really just a project for me to just understand how to do a knit stitch without making mistakes constantly. It was originally meant to be a scarf, but then halfway through I decided it should be an ear warmer. So that's why I've got these kind of narrow, thin ends, and then it increases a little bit here. So I learned how to increase. Then here I learned how to decrease, and then I continue in here, and then it goes to the tip. So it's not terrible by any means, but I have worn it occasionally because it does do its job, and I do really like the color. So not amazing, but it opened a door for me to the knitting world. And now that I am in, I am obsessed. So with this one done, I then decided I needed to have some better yarn because you guys were telling me that cotton was a little bit more unforgiving than wool or acrylic. So I thought maybe I should just work with wool instead. So I went to our local knitting shop and I got myself some green, surprise, wool. And I decided I wanted to make a little triangular scarf. So again, nothing that needed any form of actual thinking, just an increase on the side, and then I just knit away. So this is in itself actually nice. Like I am wearing this so very much. This is my go-to scarf when I go walk archery because it can function both as a scarf and as a little headscarf. So when it starts raining, which it often does, then I can just like quickly wrap it around my hair to try to save my bangs from the moisture. But from here, I was now like, okay, I am going to become a knitter. Still, I wasn't working with any patterns here because they continued not making sense to me. So the next thing I did is I copied a piece that I had already here because in the past I've been wearing these little Miss Marple scarves and I used to get them from Miss Pitchy Patchy on Etsy, and she's made so many for me over the years because every winter I decide it is time to treat myself to a new color and get one commissioned with her. So I thought since I had her knits already here, I would just try and see whether just by knitting and changing as I was going along, I could copy these kind of scarves. So this is what it looks like because I didn't have a moss green one yet. So again, there is a theme, everything's green. But here I actually had to knit in such a way that this little bit here creates a tunnel so that when this one feeds over here and through, I can loop it through. So I've got little tunnels on both sides here. And that was a little bit more difficult. So I had never done anything like this before. And the tunnels also had to be knit in a ripped stitch rather than a normal knit stitch. So I was learning a lot trying to do this and it turned out perfectly fine. So this again was one of those things that really boosted my confidence when it comes to knitting because I was like, wow, there is nothing that can stop me now. So I knit this on a needle size 5, which I just randomly decided was the right one to go with. I used Cascade alpaca and wool yarn for this because I just loved the color and I couldn't find this mossy green anywhere else. And I know that Miss Pitchy Patchy also uses the Cascade 220 yarns. So I thought these ones would be good to kind of start out with because she uses them and she is a really good knitter. So I was just thinking it was probably good yarn. And it turned out fine. I think I should have gone down in needle size now looking back because it feels a little bit kind of like it doesn't have a lot of body to it. Like it could be a bit more dense, but then again, this is a learning curve. But like considering I've just started knitting, it's not actually too different from hers. I mean, hers are obviously better, but it's not like there's an absolute massive difference in it. So again, this made me think I can be a knitter. So then I got a little bit more ambitious and I thought, if I can knit scarves, I can literally knit anything. At that point, I was quite confident doing the motion, even though I do it the English way and not the continental way. And I know on the internet people are always saying the English way is wrong and you need to do it the continental way because it's quicker and better. But I've tried both and I just cannot get control of my yarn if I do the continental way. It just keeps slipping. I drop stitches. I get really overwhelmed, and the English way, it makes more sense to me. So I'm doing it this way. And I think that is fine. I don't know how you guys feel about it, because it seems like on the internet, there's like a very strong preference of the continental way. People are like, it's just so much quicker, but is it about speed? Like, am I a speed knitter or am I just knitting because I enjoy it? But so then I decided I would go and make a jumper, because that is really why I've always wanted to learn knitting, because I feel like most jumpers, most knitwear is just really big. And on the other hand, I have quite chubby arms. So I just feel like there's no winning. If I can find something that's really tight, it will be too tight on my arms. And I just hate that most knits you can buy on high street don't have any shaping around the shoulders, because I just don't really like my shoulder region. I've talked about this before. I have these sloping shoulders that probably early Victorian women would envy me for, but I just don't like it. They're just kind of like too round, too kind of shapeless. So I always wear a poof sleeve. I've been wearing poof sleeves for years just to make my shoulders more square. So with knitwear, that is really difficult, because I just cannot find that kind of shaping around the shoulder unless I go for Emmy design knitwear and like proper 1940s knitwear. And obviously you guys know I love Emmy design knitwear, and I have the jumpers and the cardigans and literally every color. But it just feels like I want to be able to make that myself, because even with Emmy design, their smallest size is a 34, 36, and the cardigans are a little bit too big for me. And I'm not tidy. I don't know what is happening with knitwear. I just feel like everything is just always too big. Like, how can it be that the smallest size is too big for me? This is why I wanted to learn how to knit, so I could make my own jumpers that actually properly fit me the way I want them to fit. The same way that I learned sewing just so I could make garments that exactly look the way that I envisioned them. So I made a jumper, which is the jumper I have been wearing all along. And I'm honestly so excited that I managed to do this. There are a few things with it that I would do differently if I was to do it again, but generally speaking, I think this turned out really nice. So this was the first actual pattern that I used. It's the Ellie jumper by Fable Knitwear. I changed the arms on this a little bit because I had someone knit the Frostberry cardigan for me before in a size extra small, and the bodice fit perfectly, but the sleeves were just too tight. So in this case, I knew that this is kind of similarly shaped to this cardigan, so I decided to go with a smaller size for the bodice and a bigger size for the sleeves. And I kind of winged it a little bit, because I just went in and did the cuffs, and I don't understand how I'm meant to make these on a round needle. So I tried, I could not manage to do it. I had these small needles specifically for the small circumference, but I just couldn't make it work. So I then ended up just making these flat up to here, around about there, because I did multiple increases. I was meant to only do 2, but I think I did 4. And also, as I came out of the cuff, I increased by an additional 20 stitches, I think. So I actually made it much bigger than it was meant to be. And then as I reached my final increase around the elbow, that's when I then went into knitting round. I don't know how you're meant to do this. Maybe you guys tell me how I'm meant to do it. I don't know. I don't understand. But in the end, it turned out fine. I mean, you can kind of see that there's a seam here, but oh well. The other thing I didn't do overly well is binding off the neckline. So it did say to bind off loosely, and I did bind off loosely, but clearly not loose enough, because when I try to get this over my head, because I've got a lot of hair, it's just difficult. So I have to put this on before I do my hair. And if I have my rollers in for the bangs, it's just really tight. So I would definitely try doing that differently with the next jumper. But generally speaking, I just think it looks amazing. I love this color so very much. Sorry if the frame has changed, my camera just died on me. And with this jumper having been made, I then went on and made the project that I was trying to make when I first started knitting in December. And that is making the Sophie scarf. And I just think it's so funny now looking back at the first attempt I made without a pattern that was meant to kind of look like this, and how this is just so much nicer and so much like actually something I want to wear and I'm proud of, whereas the first one is just a hot mess. But then that's the learning curve. Unfortunately, you have to make horrible things in order to get better. So this is just my little white Sophie scarf. I ended up making it round at the bottom there rather than having it have a tip, just because I felt like it in the moment. And this is long enough for me to wear it like a little necktie. Let me show you. I've made this from wool I found at our local knitting shop. This is a wool merino mix from a brand called Fable, but written differently to Fable Knitwear. It's just really soft and cute and nice, and I've been wearing it a lot around the house as well because it just keeps my neck warm, and as you know, our house is really cold. So I really like this. So I then immediately went on and used the leftover yarn from this jumper because I love this red so very much, and made another one. But this time I've made it a little bit smaller and it's actually fresh off the needles, so I still have my unbound edges hanging off. But this is where I'm at with my knitting journey now. So I still think it's crazy because I've only started like, what, 2 months ago? And now I'm wearing my own jumper that I've made. But it's just really nice. I always feel like there's just such a barrier keeping me from trying things. So like when I first started sewing, which was years and years and years ago, I just couldn't figure out how to use the sewing machine. And that just kept me from trying it ever again because I tried multiple times. The sewing machine just wouldn't work the way I wanted it to work. And I feel like that was something I really had to learn, how to properly install the thread into the sewing machine and how to use the sewing machine properly. But once I had figured that out, the actual sewing just came naturally. I'm almost wondering whether knitting is the same. Like I really, really struggle to just hold the needles and do the motions. But now that I can, it's just doing it in different ways. So I'm not feeling confident yet to do any proper patterns. So what I'm trying to do next is some stripes, but like actual work that has kind of like holes in it and kind of lacy bits, that is still far in the future. But I do think that one day I want to try that as well. But I just feel like knitting and sewing are so different for me, and I quite enjoy knitting because it actually gives me the opportunity to think. Like as I'm knitting, my brain is just going on and on and on, and it gives me the time to properly think things through. Whereas with sewing, my mind shuts off. So it's the completely different way here. But I love doing my sewing because when I'm really anxious, I sew and I don't think. I'm just doing the sewing and all I can think about is the next seam. With knitting, I can sit down and I can let my mind wander and think about, you know, books and thoughts and just things in general. So it's a nice balance. And I also feel like with the knitting, I quite enjoy that it's so easily done, in the sense of if I sew, I usually commit to doing like at least half a day of sewing because it's like effort to put out the sewing machine, to load the bobbin, to put everything in, thread it correctly, set everything up. I'm almost like, okay, now I've set it up, I have to actually do some work here. Whereas with knitting, I can just be like, oh, I'll just do a row or two, and then if something happens, pff. And I also can do it at night while Jack's watching TV because he likes watching TV a lot, whereas I'm not that into TV. I prefer silence. I prefer not watching TV. So he watches TV a lot, and sometimes I can get a little bit bored with watching another video about Linus tech tips talking about stuff that I don't understand. You know what I mean, right? He is really into his computers. I'm not. So it feels like sometimes I'm just a little bit like, ugh. But then if I was to read, I really struggle because I always hear everything. Like Jack will sometimes have the TV on, watch a reel on his phone, and I'm just sitting there trying to read, and I'm listening to 2 conversations at the same time while trying to read the words. It just doesn't work. Knitting, on the other hand, does. And I still feel like I'm actually doing something because I always feel like I have to be productive. So this is honestly amazing. I enjoy it so much. And that is where I'm currently at. So this is a little summary of the 2 months of me having been a knitter. And I'm really excited to join the knitting club because everyone's been talking about knitting so much. And I just always felt like it's something that I wasn't part of. And now finally I am here as well. And if you're watching this as a knitting newbie or you're worried about starting knitting and you want to start it yourself, hear me out. If I can do it, you can do it. Just accept that whatever you do first will not be great, but that is fine. That's why you're doing it. And every single time you do something else, it's going to be better than your previous work. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And this has just taught me to try new crafts. And even if things seem to not work out, that is fine because you don't always have to be an expert on everything the first time you try it, which is a very hard lesson to learn. So we'll keep you updated on my next projects, especially this one here, the things that I'm planning to sew to go along with this. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in my next video. So bye-bye.